Most of Deuteronomy is just Moses telling the Israelites about the past, about what they've done. He repeats stuff again and again and again and again, and you just, to a certain extent, you kind of get bored by it, but I think it just shows how important the past is.
There's a part in Deuteronomy that says that you should keep teaching your children, keep teaching them, and that you should put information on your gateposts and on your doors. And for me, and I've got a Jewish background, I have mezuzah on my door and on my gatepost, and for me it's not a supernatural thing or anything like that. And sometimes people have said, oh, is it for good luck? It's to remind you.
Don't forget the past, don't forget where you come from, don't forget the mistakes you made, but most importantly, don't forget what God did for you.
I think the past is very important, not just then, but actually now, because there's so much in the past that we learn from, and if we just try and live every day for the day without any sort of foundation, then I think that's when things start going wrong. And Moses keeps putting back through, look back, look at what we did when we crossed the Red Sea, look at all these great things that God's done for us, and use that in your daily life.
I learned in Deuteronomy about the importance of understanding the history, that we can't understand Jesus without understanding the whole journey. And so for me that was one of the most important things. But I think for me the most important thing was to be patient and to keep reading the Bible, because it's so easy to just say too hard.
We need to remember the good things of the past because they inform our future. And if we forget all the good stuff that's gone on, we won't have so much faith, we won't have so much trust. It builds encouragement, it builds trust when we look at the times that were hard. Yeah, they were hard, but yet God was there with us through it and took us through, and we came out the other side.
My initial thoughts of Moses not actually getting into the promised land, getting to see it, but having to hand it over to Joshua, were that really it sucked. It just really sucked. It's like this poor guy who's like led this people for over 40 years, and at the last leg he makes one little mistake, and as a result he doesn't get in. But really I don't think it's about the mistake. I think he was just never meant to be the guy who leads the people then. He was the man for the job that he did.
If God didn't come through with what he said he was going to do, and he did tell Moses way back when he hit the rock that because of that he wasn't going to get in, if God had gone back on that, he wouldn't have been faithful God anymore. And for me, I hope I'm not taking Keith's words here, but the whole point of it is that Moses was the man for the wilderness. He was the man for the shaping of the people. He was the father of the nation almost, and his job was done. His talents, his skills had been honed and were phenomenal for where he was. But they needed something different in Joshua to go in and to settle the land.
That's a model for the church. I don't think we need one person who stands at the front and controls everything and leads everything. But when God asks us to disciple, that's evident in what happens here with Moses, in that you do part of the job, you don't do the whole job. You do your part and then you pass it on, and it goes on from one generation to the next. And I think that's an important lesson to learn, so that we don't get downhearted when the rug seems to be pulled from under us, but we instead appreciate the involvement we had in it. I don't think that this chapter does show that God supports slavery. I think like with many things in the first 5 books of the Old Testament that we've read, God often acknowledges certain traditions that exist within society, and he works with them. So it's not like he's introduced that system. He's acknowledging that, well, this is the system that's in place and I'm going to use it.
Most people would happily go into slavery rather than into starvation and death. So you could actually buy yourself into slavery. And the thing is, it's written that every 7 years you be free from slavery and leave if you wish. But there's also an option in that to actually stay and just carry on serving onwards, because there was security in that. If you couldn't afford to run your farm and it was it was going to fall apart, then you could actually move into slavery, and then you would have probably still you run your own farm, but the wealth would go to the master. So it's not slavery as in you've been sold and you've been treated appallingly. It's a case that you have sold yourself into being looked after.
If there's one thing that I feel Deuteronomy has taught me, because it gets hammered, the point gets hammered home again and again and again, is to just keep your focus on God and not let things distract you.
I think the main instruction is that you should always worship and follow God and not go off anywhere else and worship other gods or take idols or do anything else. But you must keep along that line, keep pure, keep going God's way, don't wander off.
In this day and age, we just seem to want to do our own thing. We live by our own rules, and when we need rules, we need boundaries, we need structure. And I think more and more these days we seem to think that structure is bad, law is bad, guidance is bad. We should be brought up to be a free spirit with no boundaries, which is in the end just only comes out one direction, which is total anarchy.
I mean, Moses says time and time again, do not worship other gods, do not worship other gods, do not worship other gods, and do not worship other gods. And it's just, and the point being that it is so easy to be distracted by the things in this world. I mean, if you want to apply it to the modern world, pop stars, movie stars, you know, magazines and music, films, all that kind of stuff. We get so sucked into worshipping celebrity culture, and I think back then it was the same. You know, a new god had come along, people would get sucked in, and it's just, I think, just yeah. If it's taught me anything, Deuteronomy, it's just that don't be distracted. Keep your focus on God, the one true God, and just listen to what His guidance is for your life. So that you stay on the right path.
Deuteronomy does teach us about the past. We've got to learn a lot from the past and what's happened already. But the key thing about Deuteronomy is not just to leave it in a box, not to leave what we learn in a box, but God's wanting us to teach it forward. He's wanting us to take that knowledge and to teach it to our, you know, like our families, to our friends, to children. And I think it would be wrong to say just leave it as a historical thing. It's a living thing that we've got to teach forward as well.
I think the obvious character that I'm going to miss from Deuteronomy is Moses. He's been a very good leader. We've followed him throughout the last 4 books of the Old Testament, and just seeing what he's had to put up with, being almost the lone voice. He's had support from Aaron and Joshua, but for the most part he's always been the one person who's like speaking on God's behalf and trying to rally the people towards God, and no one listens half the time.
I just so admire the man, because these people that he was leading, God blimey, they were hard. They were like, whatever he wanted to do, they would do the opposite. And yet, even when God had had enough of them, Moses would stand by them and say, no, please, another chance for these people. Another chance. I want another chance, and maybe another chance. And yet they still get it wrong, and yet he stood strong, encouraged them, forced them forwards. Even when they stood against him, he kept going. And with all that, everything that went wrong, he took every single thing to God. And I think that's something we can all learn, that when it's all going wrong, we take every single thing to God. It's certainly something I've learned from Moses.
I began to love Moses as a real father figure, an old friend, and to be honest, I was really, really sad when we said goodbye to him.